It's now time for On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson. The conversation will range from local dialogue to international. This show is meant to enlighten, inform, and to inspire. On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson begins now.
Hello, and how are you? Welcome to On the Line. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. Please excuse the nasally sound. The doctor says it's acute sinusitis. So we take antibiotics and we drink plenty of fluids and we get some rest, and hopefully in a little bit it'll be gone because I'm really tired of it. But anyway, if that's all I have to complain about, then I don't have anything to complain about, right? No guest today. It will be you and I. We will go through some news stories that you may have heard, some that you may not have heard, but we always want you to be informed, want you to know what's going on, and you can then act if you know what's up. So if my voice will hold up, we'll go through some of those stories right now. First one coming out of South Carolina. May the 23rd, the Supreme Court ruled, the ruling was 6-3, that the electoral maps drawn by South Carolina Republicans were not, N-O-T, were not unconstitutional, nor did they present a barrier to black voters exercising their political power. That was a reversal of previous rulings from the lower courts. So Justice Alito wrote the majority opinion. He believes the decision from the lower courts was wrong. And the case concerns South Carolina's congressional 1st District. It stretches from Savannah and Hilton Head all the way to Charleston. And upon the district's realignment after the 2020 election, there were several majority black neighborhoods. They were moved into the surrounding congressional 6th district. So that changed from that, elicited a challenge, I should say, from the South Carolina NAACP and one particular resident. And the liberal justices argued that the Supreme Court's decision was disrespectful to the work done by the lower courts and their judgment that the purge of 30,000 black voters from the district was essentially, quote, bleaching, end quote, the district. 30,000 black voters, you all. 30,000. And you want to tell me why you don't vote? They are so happy to hear, they, in air quotes, they are so happy to hear you don't believe in voting, because that makes their life a whole lot easier as they're wreaking harm all across these United States, tearing down any voting rights that we have, or trying to at least, and being halfway successful at it, right? Also wanted to talk to you about Tim Scott. What are we going to do with Tim Scott? Well, you know, he's a Republican black man from South Carolina. He dodged a question earlier over former President Donald Trump's false claims that he was in mortal danger when the FBI raided his Florida home last year. Of course, Tim Scott wants to join Trump on his November election ticket, so he's just going to say just about anything, right? Trump said last week that the FBI was, quote, locked and loaded and ready to take me out, end quote, when agents searched his Florida property for missing classified documents, right? And Scott would not address the language. He had an interview with Dana Bash on CNN. And Bash noted that President Biden, you know, he faced a similar search for classified documents. But Tim Scott, I saw the video of the SWAT team from the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago. I had not seen the video of them raiding Joe Biden's garage, so I'd love to have that comparison. But more importantly, once again, we find ourselves reinforcing this two-tiered justice system where we see a different standard for Republicans and specifically a different standard for Donald Trump. How does this man come out of his mouth? How did this man get into office? People in South Carolina were asleep. Some people might say people in Virginia were asleep when our current governor was put in office. How does this happen? These politicians, and they're coming out saying the craziest things, like it's normal. Like they're saying to you, oh, look up at the sky is blue. But in reality, what they're saying is, look up at the sky is tie-dye or purple or something, It's just very disheartening. And so Tim Scott wants to be on that ticket. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is in it for you, Tim Scott? What do you think is in it for you to be picked, chosen, designated the vice president should that man re-enter the White House? Don't you know what he thinks of you? It's ludicrous. People get into certain positions and they think certain things don't apply to them. They still apply, buddy boy. They still apply. You are still Tim Scott, okay? That black man from South Carolina. That's what you are, okay? So we get disillusioned with these titles and getting around people, and it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. So that's what Tim Scott is up to. I didn't even talk to you earlier when I was talking about the earlier court case, Supreme Court case, Clarence Thomas. Oh, my gosh. Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas came out and he says that he does not think the high court should have anything to do with cases that involve racial gerrymandering. Why would you say that, Mr. Clarence Thomas? I told you all this. If somebody walked in the room and said, Cheryl, who can you have an interview with? Anybody in the world, it would be Clarence Thomas, because I am trying to understand how a person who is fully educated, that has been around both sides of the aisle, that has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, how he comes up with the opinions that he does. How are you married to someone who is advocating overtaking the government that you sit on the highest court claiming that you're defending? How in the world does this happen? It is just, you can't make it up. If I were reading a book, I would say, oh, that's a book. Or watching a movie, I'd say, oh, that's a movie. But this is real life. Democracy is in the hands of these people. It's real. And we can't bury our heads in the sand. Where's that going to leave us? Some of us never thought that the U.S. would be in the position that it's in now, with someone such as a Trump on the threshold of being president again. A man that is full of legal cases. I mean, it is unbelievable. It really is. I like watching the History Channel, and I like watching old cases of how things happen and all. And sometimes in my mind, I try to fast forward and just try to think what TV shows of the future will say about these days. How will it be framed? Will people watching just think that's absolutely ludicrous? How could that happen? Or will people be saying, well, yeah, that makes sense? It's just, I don't know. But Clarence Thomas is sitting on the highest court. Do you all think that the Supreme Court should have term limits? Right now, it's a lifetime appointment. We all know that. Do you think the Supreme Court should be expanded? Do you think it should be, say, 9 justices or 13 justices? Do you think there should be age limits for the Supreme Court? What are your feelings? Don't you remember a day and a time when the High Court was thought of to be such a respectful organization? And now it's like the Supreme Court, and it's like halfway a joke, right? So just interested in your thoughts on that, especially about the Supreme Court and age limits, term limits. How do you look at that Supreme Court now? Whew. Okay, so we've got to get healthy. Here I sit talking about being healthy, and I can't even barely talk. But let's talk about it. We just came off some holidays, and some people might have indulged in some things that they don't indulge in all the time. Don't panic, okay? Moderation with everything. But a new study does suggest that the consumption of ultra-processed foods can not only increase a person's chance of experiencing a stroke, but it can also be responsible for cognitive decline. What are the ultra-processed foods that we eat on a daily basis that are really killing us? I'm telling you, between the dyes and everything else they put in it. So we're talking about foods like chips and sodas and hot dogs, and these foods have been known to cause health conditions. I'm talking depression. I'm talking diabetes, even death, right? So how do you handle that? When you go to the store, do you automatically say, okay, we've got to get snacks? Are the snacks healthy snacks? Do you do it in moderation? Do you just always indulge in snacks? Or do you sometimes say, okay, this week we're going to get healthy snacks. This week we're going to get not so healthy snacks. Do you get the celery and the dip sometimes? Do you get the granola instead of the chips or the Cheetos? Those squirmy, wormy things that kids eat all the time. I found out adults eat them too. I don't know what they're called. Are we always consuming these things, or are we trying to do better? Because let's face it and let's be honest, we know all of that stuff is not good for us. We know that the lunch meats are not good for us. We know, like I said, the chips, the sodas, the hot dogs, we know that. And I often think about we're so advanced now, right, with everything. But I dare say that probably even back times during slavery, people eating what were considered slops or mess or leftovers or something like that, it was probably healthier than a lot of the stuff that we're eating today. I mean, really, seriously, think about it, because it didn't have the hormones and it didn't have the dyes and it didn't have the additives in it. So it might have been even healthier than the things that we have now. And I think about formulas and things that have been out, and how companies have changed original recipes. Like I remember my dad had to take Ensure. And I wonder, the Ensure today, is that a better product than the Ensure of 30 years ago? Because companies are all about the profits. They're not really about your health, right? So if they found a cheaper way to make something, have they in fact gone that route? We don't know. We don't know what's going into it. We're just buying it, right? Have you picked up anything and you've seen the label bioengineered on it? That's the latest. And it's out there. So who's responsible? We're responsible. We are. Because we have to make choices. The studies are out there. They're telling us continuously all the time what's good, what's bad for us. We make the choices. And now, I'm telling you, growing up, I thought we were like in prison or something. Because, Mom, I told you all this before. Going to the grocery store, we wanted Dad to go to the grocery store. Now, that was rare. Usually if Mom was sick or something like that. But if Dad went to the grocery store, we could get the Oreo cookies. If Mom went to the grocery store, we had to have the oatmeal cookies or the pecan sandy, something sensible. If Dad went to the grocery store, we could have, say, Captain Crunch. With Mom, we had to have Wheaties or Cheerios or Raisin Bran, something, quote unquote, sensible. We could not drink sodas. I told you all when I came to Norfolk State, I drank sodas for 30 days. I was so excited that I could drink a soda. I don't drink sodas now. I don't even buy them. They're not even in my house, okay? But it was just, we grew up that way, and you could, for dinner, we had milk or we had water. That's what you drank. So Dad had sodas, but us kids, all four of us, water or milk. Take it or leave it. So they had a study, and it followed 30,000 participants over the age of 45. They studied them for 11 years, right? And they noted the increased risk of stroke and cognitive impairment is higher when you're eating those ultra-processed foods. So that's a pretty involved study. Anytime they've done it for 11 years, 30,000 participants, right? So processed foods, they are changed from their natural state through ingredients, so salt or sugar or oil, and they create extra substances, fats and sugars and starches and all of that stuff. So, we have to be in charge of our bodies. And we can go to the doctor and they can tell us what to do. But if you're not going to follow it, if you're not going to do it, you're being in charge of your body. But it's a hard thing to be in the healthcare system. So that's just something to think about. It is very hard to be sick. It's very hard to be in the healthcare system with the insurance and the games that the health insurance companies play. So just stay healthy. That's it. Just go out and walk. I read something the other day, and it was talking about for your brain activity, you should run. A lot of people are not into running. So that's just, maybe you walk fast. Maybe that's the alternative, right? Another good thing to do is to learn a new skill, like learn how to crochet, learn how to speak French, learn how to do woodworking, something like that. Another thing they mentioned was start using your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, start learning to work with your left hand and vice versa. It gets different parts of your brain fired off, and that's good for you. That is very good for you. So, yeah, we want you eating better. Ultra-processed foods make up almost 58% of total calories consumed by Americans and are their main source of food. So I think we need to go back home and start cooking. I was talking to somebody, and they said something to the effect that they had eaten out breakfast, lunch, and dinner. First of all, I'm like, how in the world can you afford that? But just think about all that processed food. It was all fast food restaurants the person had been to that day. That's a whole lot of junk that you're putting in your body. So we'll just try to do better, all right? There is a consumer advocate that I have been following for about 20 years. His name is Clark Howard. You can find him at clark.com. And he's a millionaire. He made his millions. He had a travel company, and I think it was in his 20s that he sold the travel company, and he is a consumer advocate. So if I want to buy a microwave, or if I want to know about a Roth or a IRA or whatever, Clark is a source I always check out. He's a very knowledgeable man. One of his pet peeves in life is, he calls them a piece of trash, but he does not believe in debit cards. He calls them piece of trash debit cards, right? So recently they wrote an article was written on his website about debit cards, because his whole thing is do not use a debit card. Why not? Because the debit card, doesn't have the same protections as a credit card, because Congress did not grant, the banking industry lobbied the lawmakers for what they wanted, and that's the way the debit cards are set up, right? So I'm going to read a bit of this article for you. The title of it is Why Clark is Prepared to Break His No Debit Cards Rule. It was posted May the 28th, right? Clark Howard has advised consumers to avoid paying with debit cards for years. His reasoning, pretty simple. When compared to credit cards, they offer inferior consumer protections. Plus, you could be leaving 2% cash back or more on the table by not using a cash back credit card, right? But Clark is prepared to break his own rules in 2024. So thanks to the upcoming changes for credit card fees, many merchants are more likely to soon pass along a swipe fee. The swipe fee is going to go to consumers when making purchases with a rewards credit card. You may already have experienced this if you pay your bills online, right? But soon, Clark is saying that he expects this to be more widespread, and it could impact everyday purchases back in purchases in the store and online. So, a listener to Clark's show, he has a radio show, asked what he would do when he was faced with these fees at the register. So Clark says, I've made the decision that when there's going to be a fee, I'm going to, for the first time ever, use my debit card, and I know the risk that comes with it. Credit card processors Visa and MasterCard recently reached a $30 billion settlement. This was on an antitrust lawsuit that accused the payment giants of charging inflated swipe fees to merchants. And this is true. You might have gone to some establishments where they say if you pay in cash, they would give you a discount. It's because of the fees they're having to pay. So if this goes into effect, this could make using a rewards credit card much less attractive, right? So Clark might be ready to do away with his rule about no debit cards in those instances, but you have to figure out what to do for yourself. A black woman has been crowned Miss Universe. I felt some kind of way about this. Black woman crowned as Miss Universe Philippines for the first time. Her name is Chelsea Milano. She's 24. She earned the title of Miss Universe Philippines, right? Her mother is Filipino. Her father is African American. She made history, first black woman to receive Miss Universe Philippines crown. But the reason I have felt some kind of way about this is because in the last couple of weeks, we had 2 pageant winners here in the U.S. that turned in their crowns. And, you know, there's always this whispering around the fact that women that participate in these pageants, even the winners, they're not treated very well. They're not treated very well at all. They have no freedom. They say they're silenced about how they really feel about things. So I don't know. Miss Philippines Universe says, as a woman of color, I've always faced challenges in my life. I was told that beauty has standards. Actually, she was taught to believe in my mother, to always to believe in yourself, uphold the vows that you have. Because of these, I am already influenced a lot of women who are facing me right now. So it sounds good, but I just don't know. You all remember we had a pageant queen that committed suicide a couple of years ago. And by the way, she wrote a book and her mother finished that book, and I've been meaning to read that book. Speaking of books, hold on. Hold on, don't go anywhere. There we go. I am reading a book. The book is called Coming Home. It's Brittany Griner, the WNBA player. My daughter bought me this book, and it's a signed first edition. So that was pretty cool, but it's just talking about her time when she was being held in Russia. I'm about halfway through the book, and so I will let you know how it is. But I can't put the book down because I'm reading the details about what her daily life was like. Like, she's describing everything in such details: the cell, the cage she was in, the cell she was in, the shower room she had to use, how it was to try to make a phone call, what the guards were like, what they looked like. I mean, she's very descriptive in the book. And that's good for me because these are things I wonder about. It's like, you know, you're being held in Russia. I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is that like? So I am reading Coming Home, and I'll let you know how that works out. I don't know if you heard this one. Otis Redding's estate has partnered with Sony Music. So they're going to bring his classic to new audiences. Again, this is Otis Redding. The estate of Otis Redding maintained that this deal is strictly to administer the songs of the late soul legend in the United States. So his songs, what? Try a Little Tenderness, These Arms of Mine, I've Been Loving You Too Long, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, you know, all of those good old songs, right? So this is good news for the family. This is good news. I'm sure they'll find brand new audiences that they didn't even know were out there. And so much is changing in the world of music and how things are done. And this is some good news right here. All right. State of California has passed 3 laws having to do with reparations. 3 laws. And if I can pull it up, I want to go through that with you quickly so we can talk about it. Of course, the iPad doesn't want to work quickly when I'm trying to work quickly. That's okay. That's okay. It doesn't want to tell us about California, but it wants to tell me about Americans are feeling better about the economy. That's interesting. Here we go. 3 bills aimed at creating sources of funding for the compensation of Black Californians passed the state Senate after years of groundwork. The bills were authored by State Senator, he's a Democrat, Stephen Bradford. It will create a fund for reparations, provide compensation for land taken by eminent domain for racially biased reasons, and the creation of the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. Bradford says these are not a handout or charity by any measure. It was what was promised, it is what is owed, and it is what is 160 years overdue. If you inherit generational wealth, you inherit generational debt, Bradford said. Reparations is a debt that's owed to the descendants of slavery. So that's very interesting. The bills, I think I was reading earlier that the bills do not provide any money. Money is straight money is nowhere in the bill. It's not like, anybody's going to get checks for $50,000 or whatever, $5 million. But there are 3 bills that have been passed in California, which I think is interesting. Everybody says California is wacky and everything, but they're doing some different stuff. And they're doing that while the governor, Newsom, is trying to cut the budget as we speak. So we shall see how that works out. Proud to say that you can do anything at any age. And we are reminded of that after Aveline Day, 79 years old, recently earned her college degree. Walked across that stage, accepted her diploma from Troy University. I don't give myself any expiration dates on anything. Day said she had dreamed of getting a psychology degree when she was younger, but she just couldn't afford it. Day was enrolled in Alabama State University after high school, but guess what? She did not have the money to finish. We hear that story so many times, right? Decades later, Day's son surprised her by helping to send her back to school. Her son, well, Mom, I'm not going to give you a Christmas present. I'm not going to give you a birthday present. So how about I send you back to school? She earned her degree by completing classes online. It took her 4 years. The 79-year-old said taking classes on her desktop was not easy. She said, I love to read. That is not a problem. I'll do the assignment, but now I'm supposed to put it in this computer. How the H am I going to do that, Day said. After overcoming her struggles and earning her degree, she hopes her story will inspire others. Life is there because I'm probably close to the end, and I have to grab it as much as I can, as I possibly can while I can, said Day. There's some inspiration for you right there. 79 years old, going back to college, not even sitting in a classroom, doing it online. She's like, how am I supposed to put this back in the computer? I hope that motivation sends you off and starts your week off very, very well. Do this for me. Hug somebody, pick up the phone, call somebody you haven't talked to. Sit down and write a letter and mail it. That really makes people smile. Pick up a book, like I said. Go outside, get some fresh air. Walk around the block. Say hello to the neighbors, okay? Think about what you can do to make this world better. Make sure you have some time for yourself, your family, the things that are important. And just try, as my co-host says, and it stays in my head all the time, just try and go out here and be a good human. That's all we're trying to do, right? So that's it. Thank you all for hanging with me today. Hopefully we'll have some guests next week. Sometimes guests have a little problems and they tell me they can make it and then they can't. We understand. It happens. Stuff happens. The world's going to keep on turning. It's not the end of the world, right? If you can, make sure you encourage a college student this summer to, stay in the studies. Make sure you do that with an elementary school student, a middle school student, and a high school student. Yes, the summertime is fun, but, we got to have some structure and some studies in there as well. So when they go back in the fall, all is well. I appreciate you all so much. I thank you all so much. We'll do it again next week. Take care and have a good one. As always, behold the green and gold.